Hi everyone, happy Kwanzaa and Habari Gani. Today is the first day of Kwanzaa 2021 and I'm very excited to be celebrating the 55th anniversary of Kwanzaa, if I calculated that right. This is the first video of hopefully, if I have time, a 7-part video series going over each of the principles of Kwanzaa and having celebration for 7 days. So Kwanzaa was founded in 1966 and it lasts from December 26th all the way through January 1st. In each video, I'm going to be explaining some of the terminology of Kwanzaa, and I will also be going in depth of the principles for the day. What I'm going to be using as my reference book is this book that is part of a series by National Geographic called Holidays Around the World, Celebrate Kwanzaa with Candles, Community, and the Fruits of the Harvest. And it was written by Carolyn Otto with her consultant being Keith Mays. So I'll go into a little bit of detail about this book as I go along. Before I get into the informational part, I'm going to start off this video with pouring libations to the ancestors. And pouring libations is basically a way of honoring your ancestors. You pour water onto the ground, you can pour it into the ocean, or you can pour it into a plant and say the names of your ancestors. Now, your ancestors don't have to be somebody who's actually in your, bloodline. They can be someone for Kwanzaa during from Black history. So it could be somebody that you really admire who has passed away and that you want to honor during this Kwanzaa season or throughout the year. So I have my water in my little cup and I have my plant. And when you say the names of the ancestors and you pour the water in there, you say Ashe, which means, so it is or so be it. Similar to saying Amen, but in a different language. So let me start with ancestors from my bloodline and also ancestors from Black history. So Granny, Grandma Lavinia, my father Perkins, his father Perkins Smith Jr., Ashe, Emmett Till, Mamie Till Mobley, Malcolm X, Gabriel Prosser, Nat Turner, Queen Nzinga, Ashe, Senefer, Hatshepsut, did I say Emmett Till, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Ashe, Augusta Savage, Francis Ellen Watkins Harper, Henry Ossawa Tanner, Ashe, and let me see, Aunt Dolores, Ashe, for the hundreds and thousands of Africans whose names I'll never know because they lost their lives in the Great Ma'afa, which means, struggle, Holocaust. We remember them now. Ashe. So that is my libation statement. And if you want to do one at your house, you can do that as well. And sometimes people put pictures of their ancestors in a designated part of their house and just remember them and keep things very beautiful and sweet as a way of remembering how they affected our lives. So today's principle for Kwanzaa, the first day of Kwanzaa, we are celebrating the principle of Umoja. And this is Umoja. It is on a black candle. I purchased this banner in either 2011 or 2012 from somebody that I know, and I have been using it every single year. I love all of my candles, banners, and I hang it on my wall every Kwanzaa because it's just really great. So, as I stated, today is Umoja, and Umoja means unity. It means to strive for and maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. For Kwanzaa, there are 7 candles. There are 3 green candles, 3 red candles, and 1 black candle. And the first candle is the black candle. The black candle represents the people, who are always supposed to be the sole focus of Kwanzaa. The health of the people, the wealth of the people, just everything about the people, the betterment of the people. That is our core goal for Kwanzaa and throughout the year. The 7 principles of Kwanzaa are called the Nguzo Saba. Saba is Kiswahili for 7. So 7 principles, and each principle is something that we can use not only to better our community, but also for the empowerment and betterment of ourselves. When you have all of your Mishuma Saba, the Mishuma Saba, which is the 7 candles, you place them on a kinara. And this is one example. How you light each candle is the first day you light the black candle. The second day you light the red, and then you go alternate. So black, red, green, red, green, red, green. Depending on who you ask, you're going to have different meanings for the colors of the candle. Some say that the red candle represents the struggle, whereas others say that it represents the blood that was shed. Others state that it is to show that you are African by blood. The green candle, some say, represents the motherland. Others say that it represents prosperity, and others state that it represents the hope for the future. So you always end Kwanzaa with the green candle. But since today is December 26th, it is the first principle, so we are going to be focusing on Umoja, the people. Before I get into some of the things in this book, I wanted to share with you a little bit about the author and the consultant. So the author, it states, Carolyn Otto, is best known for her award-winning nonfiction books for children on topics ranging from animal camouflage to wolves and spiders. She has over 20 published books. Now, she also has some books on other holidays as well, which I think was pretty cool. It says, Carolyn grew up in Colorado and holds a bachelor's degree from Colorado College. After a number of years working for a major New York publishing company while earning a master's degree from New York University, she returned to Colorado. She lives in Colorado Springs with her dog, Belle. Now, the consultant says Keith Mays is an assistant professor in the Department of African American and African Studies at the University of Minnesota. His areas of concentration include African American 20th century history, specializing in African American rituals, cultures, and holidays, especially Kwanzaa. He was a Woodrow Wilson Scholar and graduate fellow at Princeton University. Now, I don't know how updated these biographies are because this book was published in 2008. So, it's been a little over a decade, but the information inside is still relevant, it's still pertinent, so you can still use it. And I think it is a very nice book. It's very straight to the point, simplistic, but it has all of the information you need to just get it done with, get everything you need in order to celebrate Kwanzaa. Now, when I say that you light the black candle for the first day, if you don't have a kinara, if you don't have the Mishuma Saba, you can just, get one candle. I have a candle holder. I have one candle in it. Kwanzaa is not about spending all of this money. It's about utilizing what you have, being creative. You don't want to break the bank. Most of the presents that you make, or the zawadi, you want to, make it yourself because it comes from your own creativity. So even if you have one candle, whatever color it is, and you light it every single day for the 7 days, or you draw a picture of a candle and just state the principle for the day, that's good enough. You're using your creativity. The first page of this book or the second page, it has a little girl and she's holding a basket of her harvest. And it states that Kwanzaa means first fruits of the harvest. During Kwanzaa, we gather together to give thanks for the harvest, which brings us the good things of the earth. We remember the past and our ancestors who worked the earth. We celebrate hope and promise for the year to come. Now, when it talks about first fruits, from what I learned as a child, what Mama Deborah taught me, she started Yari Yari Literary Group. So that's how I started celebrating Kwanzaa, through her group. But with the first fruits, the whole concept is throughout Africa, in different countries, there were different festivals. And this is not just Africa, just all over the world. But there are different festivals and celebrations for whatever harvest was brought. So like if it was the yam, there was a celebration for that, the harvesting of the yam. If it was another vegetable or fruit, it was the harvesting of that. So Kwanzaa, the first fruits, the fruits can be what we've accomplished throughout the year, celebrating that, the trials that we have overcome throughout the year, what we have done to make our community a better place throughout the year. Now that I would consider to be the first fruits. In the back of this book, Keith Mays writes, Kwanzaa is not an African holiday, or although Kwanzaa is not an African holiday, it was inspired by African culture and is based on African cultural practices. Kwanzaa was created in 1966 by Maulana Karenga and the US organization in Los Angeles during the civil rights and Black Power movements that began in the 1950s and continued throughout the 1970s. Now, it really all depends on who you ask about who founded or who started Kwanzaa, because he states this, but I do recollect in college finding a lecture that the late Dr. John Henrik Clarke did on Maulana Karenga and Farrakhan. And in his lecture, he states that it was actually the group that made it up, and someone took credit for it, because I'm not pointing fingers, but somebody took credit for something that was a group effort. And that is how Kwanzaa began. But never minding who started it or not, I still think it's a good, concept, holiday, unify people, something positive to bring to the community, which is what we really, truly need. And it says, today young people may be Kwanzaa's largest audience and most important constituents. Many Black children have been introduced to Kwanzaa in their homes or schools, where the African side of African American identity has been reinforced. Kwanzaa has rooted African American children in their history and culture, providing them with a sense of belonging in the world. Now, from my memory, I don't think Kwanzaa is the only holiday that we created. I'm pretty sure there was Juneteenth, and there was a handful of other holidays that I know. When I published my book on Kiswahili, I actually had a list of holidays that you could celebrate throughout the diaspora for every month, but I don't remember it from the top of my head. But Kwanzaa, I believe, is not the only holiday that we've created. We as a people are very inspirational. We'll create celebrations out of, the most detrimental situations, and we'll make it a tradition because we're just creative like that. So it states that the words we use to celebrate Kwanzaa come from the Swahili language, or Kiswahili. And Kiswahili is spoken mostly in East and Central Africa, but you can hear it in places all over the world. Now, at the time of this publication, the author states that 35 million people speak Kiswahili. I don't know if the number has increased or if it has decreased. The reason that Kiswahili was selected for Kwanzaa is because it does not belong to one designated tribe. Therefore, it can unify all of us all over the world. Kiswahili is a language, from my research, that came or stemmed from trading. So you have people along the coast, and then the language moved inland. It's a very fun language to learn. It almost has similar sounds to Spanish. There were sometimes I would look at a Kiswahili word and it looked exactly like a word in another language. And I'm like, that's interesting. But it's very easy to learn. I think that it should be taught in schools. Some schools have done it, but not a lot of schools have incorporated Kiswahili into their curriculum. And I think that would be a great language. Because for some people, Kiswahili is actually their second language. And that's how they navigate throughout, different countries in Africa and different parts of the world. Now, I'm going to share with you one or two symbols, a couple of the symbols of Kwanzaa. It says, in our decorations, we include many important symbols of Kwanzaa. We put a mat called the mkeka on our table. I don't know if it's the mkeka or the mkeka. I'm not very fluent in Kiswahili. But this is the mat right here. We arrange a basket filled with fruits and vegetables on the mkeka to represent the harvest. Ears of corn are placed on the mat, one for each child in the family. So this is the corn representing the children. And the kikombe cha umoja, or unity cup, is placed there. So I guess you use a unity cup for libations and various things. But this book is very good because it has in the back a glossary of all of the terminology that you use for Kwanzaa. Most important is the kinara, the special candle holder, and the 7 candles it holds. I don't have the kinara. I'm sure I need to get one, but maybe I'll wait in a couple of years. And it has the kikombe cha umoja right here. You see? But yeah. The symbol of Kwanzaa, or the symbol of Umoja, is an Adinkra symbol called the dog, or I don't know if it's a Dinka symbol or just a symbol. It's called the doggy knot, which is a Pan-African symbol of unity, and it is used in several African cultures. So that's just a brief explanation of Kwanzaa, just one part. I will explain to you more, information throughout the other videos. But today we are going to get started on our topic of Umoja, which is unity. I'm going to share with you some of examples of Umoja throughout Black history, some examples throughout my own personal life, and things we can do to either increase Umoja or use it as a solution for various issues that we have. I have this little button, and it says, we must learn to live together as brothers and sisters or perish together as fools. And I like this button. Got it from the Button Man. I think it is a very, very accurate example of the power of Umoja and how we have used Umoja to come this far in the course of history. I personally believe that Umoja is basically one of the most important principles of Kwanzaa, but it is also the most difficult principle of Kwanzaa. It's one thing to have unity within yourself, but it is a whole different thing to have unity as a collective. So individually, you can have people in the Black community that are unified within themselves, but that's not everybody. Collectively, we have to find a way to unify. And me personally, after just celebrating Kwanzaa almost 20 years, even though it's going on 17 years, just from my experience, I personally don't know. I know that sounds kind of like a Debbie Downer, but I don't know how we can do that. I literally don't know how. I have some personal strategies that we could possibly do, but they're not very popular strategies. But I'll share them with you in this video if you want to hear them. Hi everyone, sorry my video cut off. But anyway, as I was saying, I have some type of solutions that we can do, which aren't very popular, but as I said, I'm going to share them with you anyway. I've written a tiny little list. It's kind of brief. I tried to mention everything that I could from the top of my head, and I'll explain why I'm selecting these strategies as something we can do to unify as a community. So, the first thing that we need to do is ask the question, do we want Umoja? Do we really want Umoja? Usually, if somebody really wants something, they will go to great lengths, even if they fail multiple times, in order to reach their goal. They might spend their entire lives trying to make some type of change in their life in order to accomplish that goal. For example, you might have a person who's in poverty and they want to have some type of career field or make a certain amount of income, and they might be like, okay, I'm going to go to school, or I'm going to go find somebody in this field and with all of my might transform myself in order to get to this end goal. Now, with the Black community, one thing I notice is that makes me question, do we want unity? Is we allow things in the community that create some type of division. We perpetuate division among ourselves. Now, some people, or actually a lot of people would say, okay, well, that's because of, racism, systemic racism in the community causing this division, causing these class divides and different things. But, at a certain point, we already know about this. We already know about the racism. We already know what the original plan was, to divide and conquer. Okay, we know that. So why, if we know these things, do we continue to let it divide us? We know there are tactics to divide us, so why do we keep putting energy into these tactics that divide us? For one example that I noticed, just being a longtime member of the Black community and being born into it, is we divide ourselves almost mostly over semantics, like what are we supposed to be called? Like what are we supposed to be identified as or defined as, and all these different things. And you'll have different people in different groups just arguing. They'll be arguing on the street. They'll be arguing on the bus. They'll be arguing online. They'll be arguing on YouTube. They'll be having debates all day long, arguing about, I'm supposed to be called a Moor. No, I'm supposed to be called an Israelite. No, I'm supposed to be called this. And it's just this endless amount of fighting. That's just one fight. Then you got like colorism. You got featureism. You got classism and all of these different things. But all of these little subtle differences are, I personally feel, a distraction from the overall goal. Because even if we don't like it, even if we don't want to be seen as a collective, globally, most of us are seen as a collective. Globally, mostly. Some people may agree with it and others may disagree with it. I feel that we need to get to a point where, for a moment, just put the semantics and the names and all of these little compartmentalized descriptions aside and focus on what actually needs to be done on this physical plane, the physical things that need to be done on this physical plane. For example, you had in the past, you had the civil rights movement, you also had the Black Power movement, and the most popular known leaders of those movements, you had Malcolm X, who was a Muslim, you had Dr. Martin Luther King, who was I want to say he was Baptist, but he was some type of Christian religion. These two men had two different religions, yet both parties got things done in their own unique way. You didn't really see them too much arguing with each other because they were too busy trying to get programs in place and all of these different laws passed and all these various things, trying to gather different people to get something done. They were using all of their mental powers and the energy of other people in order to create some type of progress. But we're over here arguing about semantics. Either we could sit and do all this little doxology and theologies, or we could get a hammer and build something. Something that we take all that out of the equation and build something. That's another thing that I'm going to carry into. The second thing that I feel would create unity, and this is not very popular with some people, but this is my own personal opinion, is cutting out toxic people and organizations. I would even go as far to say as ostracizing them, even though that is the very cold term, a very cold word, but I'm going to explain what I mean. There are two examples that I want to share with you. One from an Indigenous American group that I don't know the name of them. I don't know if this was in multiple groups or just this one group. And the other is Harriet Tubman. So for the Indigenous American group, in their culture, in their society, hold on one second. In their society, if you murdered an individual that was in that society, it was almost like you were invisible. People stayed away from you. If you walked by, they just held their noses because of the stench of death and murder and injustice that was reeking from your pores. And eventually, you were basically cast out from the society. You had to go survive on your own because you couldn't live there because you had done something so horrible and so cruel and so irreparable that you could not be a part of that group anymore. In relationships such as like a domestic violence relationship, a lot of them would not have started if one or more people had set up some type of boundaries. One of the first, instances, or one of the first steps towards an abusive relationship is allowing disrespect, allowing someone to take toxic power over you. And I feel that that is what has happened to the community. We have put our trust in toxic organizations, and we have also protected toxic people. We have sheltered very, very negative, destructive people in order to save face on a global scale. How many people have posted bail for their kid that just keeps causing craziness and chaos in the community? They just keep getting them out of jail. How many people know that their relative ended somebody's life and yet here they are hiding them? How many people have some type of child predator in their family, yet they still let them come to family gatherings? And this is just in the individual, family unit. What about these organizations? How many organizations would or would not exist if one problem was eliminated? You have organizations that literally profit off of chaos and violence. If there was no chaos and violence, and they weren't making money from it, there would be no them. They need the chaos. They need the violence to keep perpetuating in order for them to build their empires. on the backs of well-meaning people in the Black community. So what happens when we learn how to love ourselves and be unified within ourselves and as a collective, when we place these stipulations there so these people cannot come in and just do whatever? When are we going to start calling out toxic people? Some of us do, but some of us don't. Because as I stated, overall, we're trying to save face. We're afraid to look bad on a global scale. One strategy that I've seen in just reading about war and different things is sometimes creating, I guess, a black and white viewpoint in society can help unify people. So one example, oh, I forgot to do the Harriet Tubman example. Okay, Harriet Tubman example. Harriet Tubman, when she was rescuing all of these melanated people off of plantations, she was leading them to freedom. What did she do? If you were going to turn back, your only option was death. She wasn't going to leave you behind. She was going to shoot you because you were a threat. You either had to stay on code or you could die. And that is how she got everybody that she needed to get to safety. It's either liberty or death. We have to get in that mindset. Either you give me liberty and a unified community, or you just give me death. That's how serious this stuff is. Because some people cannot leave the community. Some people just don't have the resources to live. So the best thing we can possibly do is create a safe environment. Just because you might have an area that's impoverished doesn't mean that it has to be dangerous. Even though people say poverty and danger go hand in hand, it doesn't have to be dangerous. You might be in a situation where you're poor and you have the decision to either I'm going to rob this person or I'm going to utilize every single resource I can possibly find in order to get out of this situation. Because I know murder is wrong and I know harming somebody is wrong. One strategy is seeing the world in black and white that I have seen in one example, September 11th, 2001. Do you remember, if you're old enough, what happened after September 11th? The first few months, all you saw was all this patriotism, American flag sales going up. If you criticized the president, you were anti-American. Just like the Dixie Chicks said they were ashamed the president was from Texas. Look what happened to them. Just blacklisted. Because everybody was on code, even though they didn't know what was right or what was wrong. In that moment of it's us versus them, a lot of stuff got done. I mean, I'm not saying it was good stuff, but I'm just saying something was done. And people were a force behind it, supporting it. So we have to get into this mindset as well. Either you are for the community or you are not for the community. If you are not for the community, then I need you to get out of the community because you're not adding to it. You're causing destruction and you're causing terror. People can't even sit on their porches, depending on where you are. People can't even be successful without you hating on them or you complaining about their prices in whatever store they're owning. Children can't even write on their own bed, do their homework without getting shot in their own house in the safety of their home. They're not out in the streets. They're literally in their home trying to better themselves. And here you are causing destruction. You need to get out. Go to jail. Go to the military. I really don't care. Just go somewhere. Just get away from me. That's how we gotta be sometimes. And I know it's hard because most of these people are people we actually love. We don't see them as some type of terrorist. We see them as our son or our daughter or whatever, or our uncle or our aunt or our teacher or our politician. But you know what? They're an enemy. Hold on one second. Hi everyone, I'm back again. So, my final strategy for promoting Umoja in the community is that we must have a definitive, is that how you pronounce it? Definitive action plan. And I know some people are like, well, we already have that. We have these organizations and blah, 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 blah. No, we need like an actual time, a deadline, statistics. We need all of that. Okay. So I feel in the past how the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement worked so well was because they had one particular specific goal in mind. They also had a deadline. They also had a deadline for any of their protests, like however many days we're going to keep doing this until such and such a thing happens. So, for example, the Montgomery bus boycott. We are going to such and such, we are going to boycott these buses until blank or until they do this. We are going to get this law passed by such and such a year. We need this particular amount of people to do yada, 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 yada. That's just like with Dr. King and his Poor People's Campaign. We need this amount of people to go to Washington, D.C. to do this thing in particular. We need strategies like that. I feel like most of our strategies are too elusive. Oh, we're going to provide meals for, children in this neighborhood. Okay. So that's a short-term solution. We need a longer-term solution. We are going to get a grocery store in this food desert. When? When are you doing it? What year? By which year? How many grocery stores do you want in this food desert? What types of grocery stores do you want in this food desert? You're just saying, we are going to build a grocery store in this food desert. How many? Is it going to be one? Is it going to be a franchise? Are you going to employ people from the community? If so, how many? What else do you need to do? How do you need to market yourself? We need to go, when it comes to strategies, not semantics, when it comes to strategies, not what to be called, but what to do. I think that's when we should really go into detail. I feel like sometimes things don't get done because we don't really exactly know what we're doing. We just keep donating money perpetually every year to these different organizations and movements and still seeing no results. And I say this as a person who has donated to other organizations. I donated to I went to try to get information from one organization, and I had to go through an entire loophole of different things. And that's what made me start asking questions. I'm like, you say that you have this program where people from all over the world are donating to you for this particular cause. You have enough manpower to actually place these plans into action, yet you're not going out into these communities buying up dilapidated houses even though you have the funds, or fixing them up even though you have the manpower. You just keep these people in a perpetual cycle. Why are you here? What is your purpose? You're going into jails and stuff trying to reform people, yet you just keep them in this perpetual cycle of not getting things done and continuing the problem so you can make a profit. So that's why we have to start questioning these organizations, these politicians, all these different people. What is your deadline? How many people do you need? What is the exact amount that you need? Almost like you're the government asking, on a grant application. Just imagine you are trying to be like, I am a grant. How much do you need? Blah, 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 blah. So that is my little 2 cents on, or 2 cowrie shells on the principle of Umoja. And if you have any solutions, or if there is anything that you think I should add to the list of solutions or change about the list of solutions, just comment them below. And happy Kwanzaa, happy Umoja.